Hey there, amazing friends. I warmly invite you to join me on this exciting journey by subscribing to my channel, liking, commenting, and sharing my videos. Every like, comment, and share brings us closer together and fuels my passion to create more great content. Your support truly makes all the difference. Thank you for being the heart of this community. Children of the Howling Moor, when a worn amulet unleashed a generational curse on innocent blood, on the windswept expanse of the Howling Moor, where the bracken and heather bowed beneath relentless gales and the fog clung to the earth like spectral shrouds, there existed a village nearly forgotten by time. In that isolated land, stories passed down through generations spoke in hushed tones of a cursed relic, an amulet worn and battered by the ravages of centuries. It was said that this talisman, hidden away in an unassuming wooden box in the ruins of an ancient chapel, carried with it a malevolent power. A power that, once disturbed, seeped into the very bloodline of those who dared to claim its fortune, unleashing a curse that would haunt their descendants for as long as the moor itself endured. The legend began, as many old folk tales do, in a time when the boundary between natural and supernatural was as thin as the morning mist. Long ago, when the village of Dunwold lay vibrant under the generous sky, a humble maiden named Elspeth discovered the amulet buried near the roots of an ancient oak. The amulet was small, a roughly hewn piece of silver tarnished by time, set with a dull gemstone that glimmered with an unearthly light under the full moon. Elspeth, whose life had been filled with quiet hardship and whispered dreams, felt an inexplicable pull toward the relic. Some said it called to her in the language of the old ones, an alluring murmur in the howling wind. Against the counsel of the village elders, who recognized in its design symbols long outlawed by superstition, she accepted the amulet and wore it around her neck. In the early days, the amulet seemed an object of beauty and subtle power. Neighbors admired its intricate engravings, a spiral motif intertwined with what looked like ancient runes. Elspeth believed it to be a gift from a benevolent spirit, a sign that fortune would soon smile upon her humble existence. But as the seasons turned, a series of misfortunes began to befall her household. Crops withered under an unseasonable frost. Livestock fell ill without known cause, and whispers in the wind spoke of a sorrow that had settled on the family like a pall. Soon, the villagers started to murmur that Elspeth's good fortune had turned sour. They whispered that the amulet was not a blessing, but a curse, one that had been bound to her bloodline long before her birth. And as Elspeth married and bore children, the curse seemed to weave its dark tapestry ever deeper into the fabric of her family. In the years that followed, the once cheerful homestead of Elspeth's descendants began to darken. Tragedy struck with uncanny regularity. A son fell ill and died in the prime of youth. A daughter disappeared on a cold winter's night, leaving behind only a trail of tear-stained letters. A relentless string of misfortunes, each incident accompanied by strange omens, an inexplicable chill on midsummer nights, gusts of wind that carried voices echoing from nowhere, and eerie lights dancing across the moor at dusk. The amulet, always present at the center of these events, seemed to pulsate with a malignant energy. Those who dared to remove it found that it always returned mysteriously, as if magnetized by some unseen force. Soon, the family's name became synonymous with sorrow and misfortune, and the cursed object was spoken of only in fearful whispers. As decades passed, the story of the cursed amulet grew into a sprawling legend, entwined with the folk traditions of Dunwold. Elders recounted that on nights when the wind howled fiercest, a spectral procession could be seen crossing the moor, a line of gaunt figures, children among them, their eyes hollow and voices eerily silent. These apparitions were said to be the doomed offspring of the cursed bloodline, doomed to wander the moor for eternity. Others claimed that the moor itself seemed to absorb their sorrow, and that if one listened carefully at the right moment, They could hear the soft weeping of innocence mingled with the low, rhythmic hum of the ancient earth. This pervasive grief was not merely the lament of a single family. It became a sorrowful part of the Moor's own spirit, a silent reminder that the curse had grown so potent that it bled into the land. In time, many of Elspeth's descendants left Dunwold in search of better fortunes, but no matter how far they traveled, the curse appeared to follow. In distant cities and foreign lands, whispers of a family afflicted by mysterious misfortunes persisted. There were accounts of a distant relative who, despite amassing great wealth, was haunted by recurring nightmares of spectral children and voices crying out in the wind. There was the story of a scholar who, while researching ancient relics in a European archive, began receiving cryptic letters warning him to return to Dunwold. And there were even rumors among international investigators that the curse was linked to a series of inexplicable accidents and disappearances, events so strange that no rational explanation could account for them, and which bore the unmistakable imprint of an ancient, blood-bound hex. Scholars of folklore and occult traditions took an interest in these tales. They began to collect oral histories from Dunwold's remaining elders, recording the variations of the curse's narrative. Some elders insisted that the amulet had been forged by a coven of druids long before Christianity swept through the land, imbued with the power of nature itself, a power that turned vengeful when misused by mortals. Others claimed that it was a relic from a fallen, forbidden religion, one that had once promised immortality and divine favor, but instead cursed its followers with eternal torment. In every version, the amulet was a double-edged sword, a source of mystical power and beauty that, when touched by mortal hands, exacted a terrible price in suffering and loss. One particular account told of a tragic wedding in the mid-1800s when a young couple from the cursed line attempted to break free from the shadow of misfortune. The bride, whose name was Margaret, dared to remove the amulet on her wedding day, believing that by renouncing its power, she could finally embrace a future unburdened by ancestral sorrow. As the wedding ceremony began under a canopy of blossoming hawthorn trees, a sudden chill descended, and the sky darkened as if a storm were imminent. Guests whispered nervously, and a sense of foreboding filled the air. In the midst of the celebration, a piercing scream erupted from the bride's side, a sound that no one could attribute to the natural course of events. Margaret collapsed, her eyes wide with terror, and the amulet, somehow still around her neck, glowed faintly with an eerie light. Despite the frantic efforts of her family and the local physician, Margaret died that very day, leaving behind an altar of unanswered questions and a wedding that became forever etched in local lore as the day innocence was brutally torn away. That incident served as a grim turning point, deepening the belief that the amulet was not merely cursed, but actively malevolent, determined to draw the blood of its bearers across generations. As the centuries turned, the cursed legacy spread beyond Dunwold. Families that had intermarried with the cursed line began to see strange omens. A child born with an unusual birthmark resembling a crescent moon, a sudden illness that defied treatment, or inexplicable accidents that seemed orchestrated by fate. In remote hamlets and bustling cities alike, whispers of the curse of the Howling Moor became a subject of hushed conversation among those who still believed in ancient magic. Occultists, paranormal researchers, and even skeptical historians occasionally ventured to Dunwold to investigate the relic and its enduring legacy. Some claim to have seen visions, a spectral procession of the curse, drifting through the mist at the edge of the moor, or the amulet itself pulsating with dark energy in a glass case in a long abandoned manor. These investigators left behind fragmented notes and blurry photographs, evidence that they too were touched by the haunting presence of a curse that refused to fade. One particularly evocative account came from a young academic who, after reading the collected legends, decided to spend a summer in Dunwold. Immersed in local archives and interviewed by an elderly storyteller, she began to piece together a timeline of tragedies linked to the amulet. She discovered that the earliest records of the curse were inscribed in a hand-drawn manuscript hidden in the attic of an old parish church. The manuscript, written in a peculiar blend of Gaelic and Old English, described the amulet as the seal of sorrow, a token that bound its wearer to a fate of perpetual loss. The text warned that every generation would pay for the sin of seeking power without understanding its true cost. This ancient curse, it claimed, was not merely a matter of bad luck, but a divine retribution, a punishment meted out by forces beyond mortal comprehension. The academic's research, though published only in obscure journals, stirred debate among folklorists. Some argued that the curse was a myth, a way for communities to explain random tragedies in a pre-scientific age. Others believed that buried within those pages was a kernel of truth about how ancient peoples understood the interplay between fate, power, and the natural world. The more she researched, the more the story took on layers of complexity. It was not simply that the amulet cursed its wearers with misfortune. It seemed to imbue them with a desperate need to seek redemption or to defy destiny. Many descendants of the cursed line, when faced with unbearable loss, turned to extreme measures, engaging in acts of charity, joining secret societies, or even attempting to lift the curse through ritual sacrifice. In one account, a group of desperate relatives convened on a moonless night in the heart of the moor. They built a makeshift shrine, offering prayers and reciting ancient verses in the hope that by appeasing whatever force lay behind the curse, they might break its hold. The night ended in chaos, a sudden downpour, a fierce wind that scattered their offerings, and a deafening wail that echoed across the darkened moor. None of them survived to speak of that night, and the shrine was lost to time. Yet that event reinforced the belief that the curse was not just a family misfortune, but a generational vendetta that demanded ritual and sacrifice. Local legends also spoke of a mysterious figure known only as the Wandering Monk, who was said to appear on foggy nights along the moor's edge. Clad in tattered robes and carrying a lantern that burned with a cold blue flame, he was rumored to wander the village, silently offering cryptic blessings or curses to those whose eyes met his. Some elders claimed that the monk had once been part of the original monastic order that attempted to break the curse, only to be driven mad by the amulet's dark power. In whispered conversations, villagers speculated that the monk was a guardian of the curse, a tormented soul doomed to roam until the day the curse was finally lifted. Though no one ever saw his face clearly, his presence became a symbol of the deep, unresolved sorrow that haunted the bloodline. As modern times advanced, technology and rational inquiry attempted to dispel the old myths. Researchers conducted interviews, analyzed historical documents, and even performed genetic tests on descendants claiming to bear the curse. Yet, despite their best efforts, the phenomenon remained elusive, a stubborn shadow that refused to yield to scientific scrutiny. The amulet itself, now held in a small museum in Dunwold, was examined under various lights and chemical analyses, but nothing conclusive emerged about its origin or its purported power. Its surface was etched with intricate designs that defied easy categorization, and its gemstone, though dull, seemed to shimmer in the dim light of the museum display. Visitors often remarked that as they stood before it, they felt a chill run down their spine, as if the object was imbued with a lingering sorrow that reached out to them. Even media began to take notice of the cursed legacy. A documentary film crew once visited Dunwold, filming interviews with the remaining descendants, local historians, and the elusive wandering monk. The resulting footage was unsettling, a series of slow, deliberate shots capturing mist-laden moors, the quiet despair in the eyes of those who claimed to be touched by the curse, and the silent, almost imperceptible glow of the amulet as night fell. Critics of the documentary labeled it sensationalist, while supporters argued that it captured a truth beyond conventional explanation. The film's haunting score and lingering images of stormy skies over the moor left audiences with more questions than answers, further cementing the amulet's place in the annals of cursed relics. Despite decades of investigation, many aspects of the curse remain shrouded in mystery. Was it the product of an ancient spell cast by vengeful druids, a divine punishment for hubris, or the accidental result of forbidden alchemy? Some allege that the curse was a deliberate act by a spurned lover or a rival clan, designed to ensure that Elspeth's descendants would never prosper. Others believe that the amulet itself is a sentient object, feeding on the misfortunes of its wearers and growing stronger with each tragedy. Whatever the case, the enduring sorrow that followed the amulet's discovery has left an indelible mark on the land of the Howling Moor, a legacy of heartache, fear, and unending mystery. In the years that followed, many who were touched by the curse either chose to flee, hoping to escape its reach, or to confront it head-on in desperate, often tragic, attempts at redemption. Some embark on pilgrimages to ancient sites of power, seeking lost rituals or long-forgotten prayers that might break the curse. Others turn to modern therapies, psychological, spiritual, even alternative medicine, in a bid to reclaim the light that the amulet had so thoroughly dimmed. Yet, for many, the weight of a cursed lineage proved too heavy a burden to bear. Families fractured, relationships soured, and communities that once thrived under the shared warmth of kinship found themselves divided by suspicion and unspoken grief. The curse, as if alive, seeped into every corner of their lives, altering destinies in ways that no one could predict or control. Today, the Howling Moor remains a place of stark beauty and profound melancholy. Fog-laden mornings give way to turbulent afternoons, and at sunset, the moor is bathed in a blood-orange glow that seems to mourn the past. The descendants of Elspeth still live in scattered hamlets around Dunwold, their faces etched with quiet resignation and hope that one day the curse might be lifted. The amulet, encased in glass and locked away in the town's modest museum, serves as a somber reminder of a legacy that defies time. Visitors come, drawn by the allure of the haunted relic and the tragic stories woven around it. They leave with a chill running down their spine, a lingering sense that some wounds, once inflicted, can never be healed. The tale of the cursed amulet has seeped into every aspect of local culture, from whispered lullabies sung to children at night, warning them never to touch a mirror or a shiny object, to annual festivals commemorating both loss and hope. Some elders claim that on the coldest, darkest nights of winter, one might see a solitary figure wandering the moor, a spectral child with sorrowful eyes, perhaps a remnant of the cursed bloodline, searching for a way to break free. Such sightings, whether true or born of grief-stricken imagination, keep the legend alive and fuel the endless cycle of inquiry and fear among both believers and skeptics. Children of the Howling Moor is more than a story of a cursed relic. It is a portrait of a people bound by fate, their lives interwoven with the ancient, dark magic that once ruled the land. It is the story of a family whose hope was eclipsed by a curse so relentless that even generations removed, the echoes of their suffering continue to haunt the wind. It is a reminder that the past, with all its mysteries and forgotten wars, can come crashing back into the present in unexpected and often devastating ways. And perhaps, in the quiet rustling of the moor and the soft murmur of ancient prayers, there lingers a promise that one day, through understanding and compassion, the relentless sorrow might finally give way to a new dawn, an end to the generational curse that has tormented innocent blood for far too long.